I always wondered why nobody did it before me. I mean, all those comic books, movies, TV shows. You'd think that one eccentric loner would have made himself a costume. I mean, is everyday life really so exciting? Are schools and offices so thrilling that I'm the only one who ever fantasized about this? Come on, be honest with yourself. At some point in our lives, we all wanted to be a superhero.
Hello, and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We forgot to introduce ourselves for the last 13 weeks in a row or something.
As many as that?
I don't know. It's been a long time.
I feel like the one I introduced you...
Who we are? Should we introduce ourselves or not?
Well, by all means.
Okay, I'm Kumar, this is Jordan. We're your hosts.
I'd introduced us the week before last as the rodeo clown and charging bull.
Oh, that's right, yes. Yes. And once again, you're proving that you're the one holding the reins. This week we're going to talk about Kick-Ass from 2010?
Yes.
Oh boy. So... So movies from 2010. Comic came out in 2008.
Yes.
And I didn't realize it until I went onto the Wikipedia page for the movie yesterday when I finished watching it. I hadn't seen it before. But apparently they had sold the movie rights before the first issue.
Before the first issue was even published, the movie rights were already sold.
So this is something that I loathe in terms of... they're writing for the movie at this stage, and I think we mentioned this last week. Mark Millar, at this stage in his career, he's a concept man. He's a pitch man.
Right.
So he comes up with concepts and he makes comics to sell the movies. Or in this case, I didn't even realize he was selling the movies before the comics were even out. So he has these so-called high concepts and...
That's it. Although I wonder, as we can talk about this a little more in a bit, but I wonder if... does this even count as an adaptation?
That's why... So when I heard that, I was immediately regretted. I was like, oh, I would have... If I'd known that beforehand, I would have stricken it from the list.
Right.
Because it's almost... In my mind, it's almost not where... Okay, so this the thing that comes to me... One of the reasons we're doing this podcast is the question of how do you adapt things that happen in comics, the functionality of comics into a movie. And the thing I always think about is Watchmen issue 5. I better ring the bell.
Ding ding, Alan Moore.
Fearful Symmetry. So this is the issue that's all about Rorschach, who has the face with the Rorschach design that's constantly morphing on this special mask he wears.
Yes, indeed.
But in that issue, if you lay it open to the middle spread, you get the layout of panels. But then if you flip backwards one page and forwards one page, you'll see the same pattern. And then you keep going the whole way through the issue, and it's almost like the issue is Rorschach's face. And of course it's working on a subliminal level or whatever, but there's lots of stuff like that in Watchmen. But you can't do that in prose, you can't do it in a song, you can't do it in any other medium that I can think of except for comics.
That's it. I mentioned it last week, I think.
And for me it's like, oh, somebody wants to make a movie what are you going to do about it? What's your solution going to be to this problem? What's your substitution going to be? And if somebody comes in and all you've got is plot, you've got a high concept, none of that stuff matters. And it doesn't even matter that it started as a comic book. The comic book didn't even need to come out in the first place. What was the point? I'm actually trying to restrain myself. I don't know if you can notice, but I'm actually trying to stay calm because I loathe this comic book. I really hated it to such a degree.
That's right.
Then I'm like, okay, I can't freak out at the top of the episode. I gotta hold it in.
All right. So that's good.
Okay.
Yes, and so speaking of adaptations,
Yeah.
so that's your perspective on comic books. How are comic books adapted to films? In the episode about Veronica, we talked about how
Yes.
Glenn Danzig.
Yeah.
I've got a copy of Henry and Glenn Forever here. Glenn Danzig, of course, used his comic Veronica as a literal storyboard.
Yeah, most likely.
Almost certainly.
Yeah.
I don't think he even bothered to transfer it to a script. I think he handed his actors, in inverted commas, copies of Veronica and said,
Yep. Do this. Do
and then what was the end result? It was terrible. So I think it should be clear by this point that adaptations that I love use their source material as a springboard, not a blueprint.
Yes, and... Okay, sorry, keep going.
No, that's pretty much all I wanted to say.
So what I wanted to say is I also, my evaluation of adaptation, yay or nay, at the end of the episode for the last 23 episodes has been incorrect. Because
I love it.
You can, if you love the comic is still there and you can just go back and read it. And if the movie is a horrible adaptation of it, it doesn't matter, you can just go read the comic. You don't have to go see the movie.
Okay.
So I kind of... Okay, let's get into this comic a little bit.
All right, fine. First of all, pause the podcast.
Oh, right, pause. I forgot about that. Pause the podcast. So do you think people should pause the podcast and go read this comic and or watch this movie?
No, I don't think so. The comic is not worth reading. The film has no twists. Everything, I think, is revealed.
Yes.
Through the narrative, yeah. In contrast to the comic, where there are twists.
Yes.
And they're terrible.
Surprises, yes. Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think we're gonna... I think we could ruin this, and... I mean, also, I think the movie, at least, is trying to be stylish in a way that even if you know what happens, you would be going there to see the kind of violence of it, if you know what I mean. So yes. I don't think anybody needs to pause the podcast this week.
No, I agree completely.
Right. Okay. So this was written by Mark Millar.
Yes, I don't like Mark Millar, as I think I mentioned. At the end of last week's episode.
So I have a complicated relationship with Mark Millar.
Great.
I first heard of him because he took over Swamp Thing after Nancy Collins, right after Nancy. So I think it was issue 140. Was his first issue, co-written by Grant Morrison, interestingly, on the first 4 issues. Yeah, first 4 issues was co-plotted by Grant Morrison and Mark Millar, and then it was all Mark Millar. Supposedly, but I heard rumors in later years that actually Grant Morrison had actually plotted a lot of the stuff that came afterwards, but his name wasn't in, and supposedly there was some sort of rift between the two because of this.
Oh, Grant Morrison having a rift with somebody.
Yeah, I don't know if any of that part of it is true, but I've heard that story more than once. When I went to San Diego Comic-Con in 1997, Swamp Thing was out. Mark Millar's Swamp Thing was out, and I was reading it and loving it. I really loved what he did on that series. And I went to
what they did?
No. Yes.
It's a little joke.
Yes.
Grant Morrison goes by they these days.
Yes, but they were both working on for those first issues, yes. But it was Mark Millar from 145 onwards. Anyway, so there was a line at the DC booth. Back then, Comic-Con was kind of a different deal. You could actually go up and get signatures from people. There was a DC booth. There was Grant Morrison, who at the time was huge for his run on JLA. He had a really fun run on JLA at that time.
Okay.
And sitting beside him was Mark Millar. And what was happening with this line was people were coming up the line, they would get Grant Morrison's autograph, and then they would be off. They would
That's
zoom
not
off.
very nice.
And Mark Millar was sitting there kind of sadly. Nobody really knew who he was because
Right.
he was just the guy that took over Swamp Thing, whatever. Nobody really had any clue about him. And the line was going, but then I got there and I went past Grant Morrison to Mark Millar. And I had a long chat with him about his Swamp Thing run.
Great.
And it was very cheery. He was so grateful that somebody, not just that somebody saw him, but was genuinely interested in the stuff and wanted to have a long chat. And he was like so happy. He drew this really awesome drawing of Swamp Thing for me in my little sketchbook that I had with me. It was really cool.
That's great. So
After
people
that-
listening to this podcast are listening to the guy that Mark Millar likes.
He liked me at that
And he probably remembers you.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if he'd remember me, but okay. So then his career, I don't know, he wrote some odds and ends, but then he started writing this, I think he took over The Authority.
He did.
So after Warren Ellis, The Authority was like, imagine like the Justice League, but like super ultra violent, gory violent.
I really like the Ellis's run on The Authority. I really like it. I think I gotta think Mark Millar is a poor man's Garth Ennis. And Garth Ennis is a poor man's Warren Ellis.
I think Garth Ennis is different from Warren Ellis, but I definitely think the Mark Millar evaluation is true. I think he's much less than Garth Ennis, but we'll get to that.
I can't wait.
He had the super violent run. It was famous for how violent it was, and DC was getting all sorts of trouble for it. And the Batman and Superman analogs were like a gay couple, and this was causing all sorts of trouble for DC.
That's right. Midnighter and Apollo.
Yes, Midnighter. I'll get back to that as well. And then he did this.
Is this going to be a 2-hour podcast?
Yeah. Then he did this series for. It absolutely is. I kind of have nothing to say about it, and I have a lot to say about it.
Really?
Then he did this series called The Ultimates. This is very important at Marvel. So Marvel did this side universe called
Ultimate Marvel, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ultimate. It was called Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate Wolverine, all this stuff. So basically, it was like. This was around early 2000s, very early 2000s. It was like, okay, the continuity is too complicated. We need a place for new readers to come on with issue number 1 that starts with a new origin. So, like, Spider-Man's been bitten by a genetically engineered spider, not a radioactive spider.
One,
They've kind of updated everything.
Yeah,
their version of the Avengers was called The Ultimates.
Yeah.
And very cheekily, I think Brian Hitch was the artist. I might be wrong about that. They, like Nick Fury in that series was drawn as
Samuel Jackson. He was indeed, that's right.
They're like, let's just cheekily steal this in, sneak this in there. And that kind of, I think importantly, it shaped the casting of the movie, but also kind of shows you, even at that time, what Mark Millar's kind of, as an idea man, how powerful he was. Like, just to have that kind of idea, and then Marvel to be like, yeah, we'll put that in the movie, that's a good idea. That kind of thing.
It was a good idea.
And the other thing I want to say about the other creator on Kick-Ass, of course, is the artist John Romita Jr.
Yes.
With inks by Tom Palmer. John Romita Jr. is another interesting guy. So he had a really cool run on the X-Men in the 80s. In a kind of clean line style that I really loved. It was the period of when like Storm lost her powers and she had the mohawk and like the punk gear. I really loved that era. And I loved John Romita Jr.'s art at the time. And then his art, so it kind of calcified into one style. But then suddenly in the 90s he had a new style. And he had a run on the Punisher Warzone, which is one of the most iconic. The way he drew the Punisher was so amazing, and he developed a much looser style at this stage. It was kind of like more jagged lines, less clean. He drew this really huge Punisher. It was, and he always had the broken nose. It was really cool the way John Romita Jr. drew him. I absolutely loved that run. It was really only 6 issues, maybe 10 total if you count the specials. But then that style calcified again. And now that's kind of his permanent style. Well, I guess it's shifted a little bit, but his choice of projects, I'd say in the last 10 years, have been really pretty awful. Like he did this Frank Miller Superman book that is just garbage.
Frank Miller.
And but anyway, he was an artist that I was really into.
But no longer. Thanks
I don't know. I think his art just kind of. Well, I don't know. I think his choice of projects definitely has been a bummer for me.
All right. Okay. Wait. You've told your Mark Millar story.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell my Mark Millar story. My encounter with Mark Millar, as it were.
Okay.
I never met Mark Millar.
Okay.
So what this is this was a birthday party for my younger brother quite a few years ago. It was a costume party, and I went dressed as Rorschach.
Okay. Yeah.
Ring that bell, Kumar.
Oh.
And there are photos of it on Facebook. In fact, I think my profile picture is currently my costume from that party. I was talking to another guy who claimed to like comic books, one of my brother's friends. And I, of course, said, "Oh man, you must like Watchmen." Then he said, "No, I don't really like Watchmen. I like a more kind of like mature themed comics like." Wait, I didn't even finish.
It's already hilarious.
Like Marvel Civil War.
Right. Yeah. Civil War was Mark Millar.
Exactly.
And they made a whole movie of that.
Yeah.
They made a whole movie around that. Yeah.
And
so he's that guy.
So childish. Oh, they team up and one's on the government team and the other one's on the not government team.
There's another...
I hate that.
Another important point here is the guy that directed Kick-Ass, Matthew Vaughn, went on to direct 3 Kingsman movies, which are based on Mark Millar comics.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's directed very many movies, 5 or 6, and most of them are based on Mark Millar comics, as far as I can tell.
Brilliant. So that's why I stopped talking to him very straight after that revelation.
Right. So this comic is about... also I should mention it was published by Icon, which was a very short-lived Marvel imprint, which was creator-owns titles.
Okay.
You can tell Disney was not... No more of that stuff. The end. Ended very quickly. They were like, no.
Once Disney acquired Marvel.
Yeah, no. Yep. You don't get to own your shit. This is our intellectual property. Why would you publish something that we don't own? No. So yeah, at the time, so it was owned by Mark Millar and John Romita Jr. So it's basically set in a world where there are no superheroes. And there's this kid named Dave Lewinsky or something?
Dave Lewinsky?
Yeah, or something.
I believe named after someone who won a contest, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Who was given the right to name the character absolutely anything they wanted.
Okay.
Luckily, they chose to name it...
Dave Lazuski or something. Anyway.
He chose to name it after himself. He could have called it anything. Sure. Apparently, Mark Millar would have printed it.
Yeah. Okay, so he's a high school... I think he's 16 or 16. And he's kind of a sad sack, but as he describes himself, he's not a nerd and he's not a jock, he's not a mathlete, he's just a nothing. But he's a heavy-duty comic book reader, and he wonders to his friends why there aren't any superheroes in the real world. And his friends are like, well, that's stupid, of course, you get beat up. This just can't be done. Well, he's like, I'm going to do it. So he orders a scuba suit online.
Yep.
And he puts it on, and he goes out, and he decides he's going to fight crime. So he starts going to the gym. He works out. He gets some exercise. And then he starts practicing. He starts practicing walking on roofs and things.
Yes.
And then he's like, okay, I'm ready. And he goes out, and he tries to... he sees somebody being mugged or something, or... what is it? I can't remember why.
No, they're graffitiing.
They're graffitiing, that's right. And he decides he's going to beat up these graffiti guys, and they beat the crap out of him completely. And they stab him, and while he's stumbling out of the alley, he gets hit by a car.
Yeah.
Now he gets picked up by an ambulance and taken to the hospital, but he manages to, with a broken back and broken limbs, strip himself naked of the suit before he gets picked up.
So stupid. So he's found naked. Yeah.
He's found naked. Yeah. Nobody
How did he get out of the suit with
suit.
broken limbs and a broken back?
Okay,
Whatever.
So the thing is, I think this is still issue... He gets hit at the end of issue 1.
This is the end of issue 1.
So, I mean, up to this point, this is a comic which is trying to be as real world as possible. Everything is, quote-unquote, super realistic. Maybe that's not the word I should...
No, I completely agree, and I've written this down. A few pages in, there's a page that really kind of perfectly sums it up. Yep. They've just come out of a movie, and they're talking about Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. Mm-hmm. One of Dave's friends is saying to him, or is it Dave that's saying to the friend? It doesn't really matter for the purpose of this discussion. Saying, "Oh, Galactus is a dust cloud. That's so lame."
Yeah.
That costume, the Galactus costume, is iconic, and Dave won't have a bar of it. He says, "That's stupid. Can you imagine people going into the cinema and seeing Galactus on the screen? What works on the page doesn't always work on the screen, asshole." And then it's like, well, what about Spider-Man's web shooters? And it's like, well, that's just... They should have put Spider-Man's classic web shooters in the Spider-Man films. So this is Tobey Maguire era, where he produces them out of his body. To which Dave replies, "Oh yeah, high school nerd develops miracle webs even scientists in real life," emphasis mine, can't create.
Yeah.
People would have walked out of the theatre.
Yeah.
People don't walk out of the theatre when they see...
They kind of do. Like, people didn't really like those Andrew Garfield mechanical web shooters.
They didn't really like those. But when a person goes to see a comic book movie, they're not looking for realism.
No, and it's so this is a really interesting thing, because when we get to the
Millar's Avatar, and this is very definitely Dave is Millar.
So Millar, you can hear him talking throughout this whole book, and I'll get to.
He's on the record.
Please remind me to get back to all these things.
So this is Millar saying,
okay,
comic books are lame. Fantasy is lame, right?
Yes.
What people want, what movies are and should be, is realism.
Well, this is. So the interesting thing to me is that I think this comic has dialed everything back. Except for the crazy stuff about him healing, which we'll get to, and in the hospital and all that stuff. Yep. It's tried to keep everything pretty much on street level. And I feel like they were doing it because the movie was going to come out, and they're like, we got to make this filmable, which to me is interesting because the movie goes way over the top and has lots of superhero kind of stuff in it.
Yes.
Which
I wonder.
Would not.
This is kind of Millar's style, though, isn't it? To kind of the cynicism.
Oh, it's very cynical and it's mean-spirited. Really,
mean-spirited is a better word than cynical, because that is it is drab. It's unpleasant.
Okay, I'll tell you why.
Mean-spirited is a good word.
Yeah, I'll tell you why. Yeah, it's very crass. It's the violence is. I wouldn't call it over the top. It's just relentless.
Yeah. And there are all these unpleasant revelations. Oh, you thought this guy was a hero? No, he's not a hero.
Yeah. Okay.
He's scum.
There's.
Oh, you thought good guys win and get the girl? No. Instead, she texts you a photo of her performing an explicit act on her current boyfriend.
Yes, and then he masturbates to that photo. And she's like 17. Would she do this?
Yeah, would she send a picture of herself performing?
I cannot imagine her doing this.
No one would do that. It's crass, as you say. It's dragging
dumb.
it down
really
in the muck.
No, I actually think I think we're looking straight
and he thinks it's realism, but
I think we're looking straight into his mind, and I tell you why. And I'll tell you what, there's something... So... Every Puerto Rican and black person in this comic is a criminal, a thug. Every single one of them.
Yep, that's true, actually.
The head criminal, the mafia guy, Giovisi, who's named D'Amico in the movie, for some reason they changed his name. Either way, it's like, well, Italian-Americans, mafia. Also, homosexuals, the butt of jokes, or subhuman. Just not even... I can't believe the amount of gay slurs. The use of the word gay as a slur so many times in this comic is revolting. Right. And I feel like it's the kind of thing where if you confronted him, he would say, but that's how kids talk, or that's real. No, that's how you talk. And also, I come back to this again and again, this is a comic that is not realistic after the first issue. Why don't you make them speak unrealistically? Why don't you take that damaging language out of it? Just change it. Yeah. It's like another example I keep coming back to is The Walking Dead.
Okay.
At some point they killed what was his... Oh my god, I can't talk about it. Stephen Yuan, who's the Korean actor. Anyway. Glenn, yes. So they ended up killing him off after like season 5 or 6 or something, and I was like, well, I don't need to watch this show anymore, because this is a world of fiction. You got one Asian character on the show and you're going to kill him off? This is not real. This is zombies. Just choose somebody else. It's not real. Just choose someone else.
This absolutely sums up the way I feel about the film versus the comic, in that fiction is fiction. And let it be fiction.
Yes. I think that's true.
Tropes aren't bad. The film is full of cliches.
Yes.
And fine.
Yes.
It's a film.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a film. We want and expect to see the guy get the girl.
Yeah.
We want and expect there to be a happy ending.
Yeah.
In the comic, there isn't any... He doesn't get the girl, and it's just unpleasant and crass.
Yeah.
And
it's really
there's all this gross violence.
Yeah.
The guy that think you're going to be a hero, he's just like... He's a fool... An accountant playing it. We'll get into all this.
Yeah.
It's all just gross, unpleasant, and Mark Millar is rubbing our faces in it and saying, "This is what people want." Yeah, this is real.
This is cool.
Why don't you enjoy
Not even
real
this is cool.
comic?
This is cool.
Well, it pretty much says that realism is. I think on that page with this author with himself saying, realism. That's what people are going to walk out of the cinema if unless it's real,
Yes,
man.
yeah.
Unless it's real, and I'm going to give you realism.
Yeah.
And it's just...
Which is ironic, because there's a lot of realism drained out of the movie, and yet there was a sequel.
We'll get to the movie, but it's not going to be a spoiler for me to say I like the movie.
I think the movie's better than the comic. I don't know if
I agree with that too.
Would say liked it, but you might be able to convince me by the end of the episode.
No problem.
Okay, so...
Go back to the narrative.
So he ends up in the hospital. He has 4 operations. They put all sorts of metal plates in his head and stuff. So
not as many as in the film.
No, but...
but he has a metal plate in his head.
After several months, he recovers. Now...
Several months, yes.
I want to say something before, and this goes to movies in general, probably applies very strongly to the Fast and Furious movies, but I have a friend who's a nurse, and like 10 years ago she moved a patient and pulled her back, and her back has not recovered.
Yep.
In 10 years.
Yep.
And people get in car accidents, they hurt their leg or whatever, sometimes, maybe a lot of times, that's permanent.
Yep.
That's an injury. They're going to have a limp.
You're limping. Yeah.
Or something, or you pulled something in your back, you're going to have issues with that, possibly your whole life.
Yeah.
He gets out of the hospital, he tries to stop being kick-ass, but he kind of can't resist, and he goes out again. He's become a bit addicted to it, I guess.
And he's fine. There are no permanent health consequences.
He says that the plates in his head kind of protect him, and his nerve endings are all messed up, so he kind of feels less pain.
This is laid on a little heavier in the film.
No, because it's late in the film. They don't announce it until an hour or an hour and a half in the movie. You don't get the voiceover that he says. Because in the movie, I'm like, well, how is he surviving this? But it doesn't until like 90 minutes in.
I'm going to have to disagree with you, Kumar. It's quite early on. He's looking at an X-ray of himself.
Yes, but he doesn't. He doesn't
and he
say.
Says, I'm like Wolverine.
He does.
He's in the hospital.
He does sound like Wolverine, but he doesn't say, I don't feel pain.
I'm sorry, I hate to do this to you. Okay. The very next scene, he's sitting at the lunch table with his friends.
Oh yeah, and they pound on him, yes.
And he's literally says that because of his nerve damage, he doesn't feel pain. And they're whacking him.
Okay.
And he doesn't feel it.
Okay.
Now, to continue with your theme of realism, like people don't recover from car accidents in a couple of months, and they're not running out and running on the streets. So here's another thing about nerve damage: being without a sense of pain is not a superpower.
No, it's bad. often
extremely bad.
It's because you get hurt and then you don't know that you've been damaged, and those people tend to die early.
That's exactly right.
They do tend to die really young.
That's right.
The people who have that condition.
That's correct.
So
it doesn't make you invulnerable to damage.
He recovers.
All damage worse.
He tells the stories that he was mugged, and the mugger stripped him naked. But he goes back out on the street again, and he fights off. So he meets this guy running away. This guy's running away from a gang to attack him. He beats up the gang. He's successful this time because of the plates or whatever. He's filmed by onlookers who put the video on YouTube. But okay, so the thing is, he had to hide what happened from his father. This time he says, some teeth got knocked out and stuff, and we don't get an explanation of how did he explain this to his father? What about the teeth? His dad's almost flat broke, and he had to pay for his operations. Now he's missing. Does he have to the tooth work, or what? How is this working? So at this point, by issue 2, we've started putting up some Clark Kent glasses on things that are just like, oh, we're not going to explain this.
We're moving away from the vaunted realism.
Forget about realism.
Which actually is more an excuse to have cynical, mean-spirited, nihilistic...
Yes, well, okay, so now, because he's taken to the hospital again in the nude, rumors start going around school that he is actually a gay prostitute. This causes one of... The girl that he lusts after but has no interest in him suddenly takes an interest in him as a gay friend, which is such an offensive concept, kind of slightly addressed in the movie.
His friends egg him on.
It's flipped in a different way in the movie. The movie is more offensive at the end, whereas this is more offensive in the middle. So he goes along with it because he wants to hang out with her, like he wants to be near her. But it's all sorts of gay stereotypes about the kind of movies he has to go watch because he's with her and stuff. All this kind of stuff where they're like hanging out like girlfriends or whatever. Anyway, meanwhile, this gangster sees the video on YouTube and he's like, oh no, another one. So he thought he was the first guy. He thought he was the first superhero, but actually it turns out there were some others that hadn't been discovered. By the way, I wanted to mention the opening, this is another thing, the opening page and the opening scene of the movie is this guy with a winged supersuit on the top of a skyscraper jumping off, and there's a voiceover, and you think he's going to fly, and you think it's him, but it's not. It's a guy who falls to his death.
It's an Albanian man with a history of mental illness. Armenian, sorry.
And that's mentioned in both the comic and the movie. And I'm like, why is it important that he's Armenian? And again, it's because that I don't know what kind of school Mark Millar went to, but he's such a British lad. You can really see that, okay, if you're a white, straight, middle-class man, maybe a rich man, if you're from an English-speaking country, though, you're in.
Yeah.
That's the club. Anyone else... And she also describes this man as mentally... What does he say? Doesn't say mentally challenged. It's something much worse. This Armenian man.
I can't remember, but I think they moderated in the film.
Yeah.
A history of mental issues or something like that in the film. But the comic,
they all do.
A little more crap.
Everyone. Anyway. Okay. So so we find out that there's these other. There have been other superheroes out there. And there's a moment I liked where he thinks about jumping from roof to roof. And then, I actually like this moment in the comic, where he's running from one rooftop, he's about to jump to the other, and he sees how far the gap is. He's like, this is crazy, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
Okay, so then he sets up a MySpace page where he can take requests.
MySpace.
Yeah. Also, there's references to, like, MySpace was kind of okay, I guess, in 2008, but there's references to the Goo Goo Dolls as, like, a popular band. I'm like, what? Is this right? It's very
dated in that respect.
Oh yeah, he's put in very specific time references in here. Will anybody get that Rise of the Silver Surfer reference?
Yeah, sure.
I don't know.
Sure.
Anyway, so he sends a MySpace page. He gets a request. He gets a request from a woman who says this ex-boyfriend's causing me trouble or whatever. I don't remember exactly what it was. She said, can you take care of him? He goes to this, the den. He goes to the guy's house, and he goes in, and there's like 20 guys there.
Yeah.
And they all start wailing on him.
Drug dealers, they're all smoking.
But then this 10-year-old girl in a superhero suit shows up, called Hit Girl, and she's got these swords, and she chops them up like crazy.
Yep.
It's very graphic chopping up.
Yep.
It's a very... And she curses, she swears.
Oh yeah.
It's very one note. And I have to... Also, the thing about it is, I guess the violence is supposed to be... We're supposed to be shocked by the... I mean, it's one note joke, like, this little 10-year-old girl is using all these bad words, and she's cutting off people's heads and legs and arms and stuff. But there's nothing... this is something I've been thinking about a lot, too, is... I like violence. Like, I like violent entertainment. By which I mean, I love a zombie movie. I love a martial arts movie. I like something where
an action film, yeah.
Violence is ridiculous.
Over the top.
But they're not even like done cheaply. Like a poor filmmaker who had not much money to do these special effects, and they look terrible.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean. I like all that kind of stuff, and I was like, okay, when I come into this episode, I have to justify why I don't like this violence in particular. And I think it's one note, and I think it's not stylish. I don't think John Romita Jr. has as much as I loved him as an artist, and I loved his machine gun violence in The Punisher, doesn't have the stylistic chops to draw a martial arts comic in a way that looks interesting or is in any way interesting past the first time you see her chop someone's legs off.
I think that's a good point. Yeah, it's just not very artistic.
It's just bland.
You're not thrilling. You're not turning the page and enjoying the stylized.
Yeah, it's just kind of gross.
The way they're drawn. No, and you're right. And she's always expressionless, as well.
Yes.
It's like this dead-faced zombie girl.
But you know what? Again, it reminded me of that scene in Watchmen.
Ding ding.
When Rorschach breaks that guy's fingers in the bar, which is the most upsetting scene of violence, where he just takes this guy's hand and he just breaks the fingers one by one, and you're like, oh my god, this is so awful, and you really feel it. You really feel it.
And he's expressionless. And then later on, the same guy has his throat cut, the blood goes on Rorschach, and his face doesn't change expression. But that's different. I mean, we're saying something about Rorschach's nature, which is that he's a psychopath.
Yes, but I'm also saying something about the depiction of the violence in it, where there's something about the stylization of it. The way Dave Gibbons draws everything in a very... There it is, look at it. There's no weird angles or... There's nothing crazy about it that he's trying to show off with it. No. It's just look at this, the brutality.
It's hard to describe art when people can't see it, but there will quite often be quite big panels, but there's not a lot going on in the panel. It will be quite a close, like big thick lines.
Yeah.
Like the swords that she's holding, big thick lines. They don't shine.
No.
They don't look sharp. They look like big blunt instruments.
Yeah.
Everything's pushed up and close.
Yeah.
There's no detail. There's no sense of motion. It just looks ugly, and as you say, there's no sense of style. It's just not. And if without that, you're just looking at like almost like a child's drawings of people's heads getting cut off.
Yeah, but in a way that it's clear to me that the author was trying to say, isn't this cool or titillating in a way? Like, don't you like seeing this? This is cool to see. This is fun to see, isn't it? This little girl real. Chopping a guy up.
Look, what if little girl could really...
Her body weight? How does this work at all? Anyway.
I don't want to talk too much about the film yet, but Hit Girl's scenes in the film couldn't be more different from the way they are in the comic.
So we learned that Hit Girl in this fight is working with a guy called Big Daddy.
Yep.
Who's
also in a costume.
They're also and they're a kind of obvious. This is, to me, it was a very obvious comment on the Batman and Robin thing. Like, think about Batman endangering a child. I'm sorry, we've been doing these jokes since the 1960s. This is not a new joke. And
Mark Millar thinks he invented
the commentary on Robin being endangered by Batman. But no,
right.
You did not. And in fact, I mean, everything, all this shit is background stuff in Watchmen. Yeah. Because in Watchmen, they just talk about. Remember that guy that used to like getting beat up by Rorschach? There was a guy that got his kicks off of it. Yeah. There was a guy that got his cape caught in a subway turnstile, and the thug turned around and shot him. This is all just one-off comments. You don't need to write 8
under
issues.
Under the hood at the end of the very first issue of Watchmen. Yeah. Read that.
Yeah, you don't need to have 8 issues of this as if you came up with this.
That's the other thing.
Yeah. So
sorry to go back to... I really feel this one page...
Okay.
One of the very last panels on that page I mentioned earlier where they're walking out of the theatre.
Yeah.
Where he talks about why hasn't anyone ever become a superhero?
Yes.
Quote, no one ever thought of it before. I.e., no one but Mark Millar has ever thought to make a comic realistic like a movie. I just would think reading that and thinking, this is your author avatar that's saying this. You've got to be kidding me.
Yeah. Okay, so then... so he finds about these other... I can't remember quite what... So he ends up meeting this guy on the street. He gets approached by this hero called the Red Mist, because these heroes start popping up. And this guy has his own Mistmobile. He has this fancy car that he drives around in. And there's an interesting moment here where they run into a burning building. There's a fire, and Red Mist... And I was... so... I don't think I'm not sure that this jived with Dave's personality. We don't know that Dave is 16 years old. I've never known him to be so brave that he would rescue a stranger's baby. That's what they think. There's a baby in the building.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that he's been clearly... I don't think he has that much empathy. I think the way he uses gay as a slur so often, I really have trouble believing the same guy is like, I'm going to save this baby.
No, he's become a superhero because he thinks it's cool.
Yeah, and now suddenly he's not
altruistic. No. So he drags the equivalent scene in the film was done much better. So, but Red Mist doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
He drags Red Mist in there.
Yeah.
It's just another chance for Mark Millar to show us how schlubby and hopeless his protagonist is because they are trapped in the burning building. They can't escape, and they have to be rescued by firefighters.
Yes. Yeah.
Firefighters have to say, get these 2 idiots out of here.
But their fame rises again. And
because they saved the cat.
They saved the cat. Yeah. Turns out to be a cat.
Or is it a dog?
So,
no, it's a cat.
It's a kitten. Yeah. So somehow Red Mist is like, we should have a team up with Big Daddy and Hit Girl. And he's like, he sets up a meeting at this warehouse. And so they're going to meet Hit Girl and Big Daddy at this certain warehouse, which was designated by Red Mist.
Yeah.
Red Mist and Kick-Ass show up, and
Big Daddy and Hit Girl
are captured
Yeah.
by all these gangsters, and then Red Mist raises his gun to Kick-Ass's head, the back of his head.
Help us, Kick-Ass.
Yeah.
Kick-Ass. and the Red Mist says, are you kidding me? This guy can't even help himself. And he's pointing a gun at him.
Yeah, and it's like, dun dun dun, this is a real, he's a bad guy, and actually we learned that he is the gangster's son.
Yes.
We learned
at that point. At that moment
we learned he's the gangster's son.
He has been mentioned earlier coming into the comic book shop,
yes.
so there was some foreshadowing there. But yeah, it's the reveal. Red Mist is not really a superhero. He's a villain.
Yeah.
And they've captured.
Big Daddy and Hit Girl have
for
been
his life.
Yeah, so they've been hitting all these businesses or run by this gangster, which is why the gangster's been after him.
Yes.
And the story behind that we're given about Big Daddy is that he was a cop whose
wife was killed by the mob.
It's similar to the Punisher storyline. So he took he trained his girl to get revenge on this bad guy, Genovese, I think his name is. Or Genovese, depending on how anti-Italian-American you want to be. We don't know. So that has been the story so far. So now we also get a revelation pretty soon after this that actually that was... Oh, and he's always carrying a suitcase around him with him. Big Daddy carries a mysterious suitcase.
Whenever they need money, Big Daddy opens the
suitcase. We don't know what's in the suitcase. Yeah. It's like the suitcase from Pulp Fiction. It's a mystery. Up to a point. And then we learn that actually all of that was made up. He made that up. He's an accountant, and his wife
left him because he's a dork.
Yep.
And he just wanted to do something cool, much like Kick-Ass.
Yeah, and his suitcase is full of old comic books, first editions, all Marvels, by the way, because it's published by Marvel.
Yeah.
And which he sells off whenever he needs money so they can buy weapons.
Yes.
And he gets killed. So we think she's dead because she gets shot in the chest. I mean, she never gets shot in the head. She gets shot in the chest a bunch of times and flies out a window.
Yeah.
And she falls out a window. And then we think Big Daddy is dead at some stage. Kick-Ass is tortured. But how does he manage to escape from... He's tied up and...
He dares them to beat him up.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So he knows they're just going to shoot him. So he starts insulting them. And so that they'll lose control and start beating him up instead.
Yes.
And that'll give him his chance to escape.
Yes.
And of course, because we can't have that, they beat him up. Then he escapes.
Hit Girl reappears.
Well, he picks up his sticks and he's like, okay, and he's ready for... And they just laugh at him and point their guns at him because they've held onto their guns the whole time.
Yes.
He's not going to use this chance to escape. But then Hit Girl comes back. She was wearing a bulletproof vest.
Yes.
She murders them. She does coke.
She does cocaine, yes. If you want to see a 10-year-old child doing cocaine, she doesn't know it's cocaine. Her dad lied and told her it was something else.
It's like a super serum.
Yeah, I mean, this is all just lines on paper, but it's tasteless, I thought.
Tasteless is the word.
Anyway.
So, they murder all the mobsters. Hit Girl gets adopted. Then it ends. They murder the rest of the mobsters.
Yes.
End scene. Hit Girl goes and gets adopted by her mother. Her mother's not dead.
Her mother's not dead. She
goes back to live with her mother. Dave.
But before that, I want to make a note that she has a little breakdown and says, "My daddy died," and hugs Kick-Ass at the end of the battle.
Yeah.
Because my daddy just died. Because in this and the movie, I really don't know where to gauge her personality. Because sometimes she has lines as if she's a 10-year-old girl. Lines of dialogue, and then sometimes if you murder a person, that is going to scar you.
Yeah.
It's going to damage your psyche in a way that Garth Ennis understands in his Punisher series. Like, this is going to wreck your life. Every aspect of your being is going to be ruined when you murder a human being.
Neither the film nor the comic addresses this.
No, she kills tons of people, and it doesn't seem to affect her in any way.
It's not the theme of the film.
And then sometimes she acts like a little kid, like... So I really didn't know how... So this one moment where she says, "My daddy just died," and cries was like, I don't get it. What are you trying to say about her, Mark Millar? I didn't get it. Anyway.
He's not got anything to say, does he?
Right.
Except that except that you should enjoy his realistic take on things.
Yes. So earlier, in his kick-ass costume, Dave had run to his girlfriend's house.
Not girlfriend.
And this
girl he
friend,
lusts after.
yes, and yelled into her window, "I'm not gay."
And I've been kick-ass all along.
No, but no. Because he says, "I'm not gay" to her. But he doesn't say he's Dave at that stage. He runs with. This is in the middle. This is like issue 4 or something.
Okay. He says he goes to. This is before his showdown with the mob.
Yeah.
Before with Red Mist, he goes and as you say, he's outside a window. He doesn't see her face to face. She doesn't even see him. He yells out, "I've been kick." He does say, "I've been kick-ass all along."
But he doesn't say I'm Dave.
And I'm not gay. And then leaves.
But he doesn't say I'm Dave. He just leaves. So it's like she's just, as far as she's concerned, it's just a weird thing to happen outside her window. So
this is after the this is in the
at the very end, she reveals that she's like, "Did you?"
Says,
were you the one?
By the way, someone yelled out from my yard that they were kick-ass and not gay. Was that you?
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, that was me." And this is where you would expect.
Yeah.
Like she'd be outraged and betrayed, but they could move on.
No, she is.
Yeah, of course. But then they would be healing. They might make.
Well, no, because okay, I'm going to disagree here
because clean.
Because in the comic, especially, I was
about the comic.
Yeah, I was shocked by his behavior, that he was pretending to be gay this whole time, and I was shocked by her wanting a friend because that person was. Well, that's not that explicit in the comic. It is more so in the movie, where she's like, I've always wanted a gay friend. She says that in the movie, which is so offensive. But she doesn't say that in the comic. She just becomes friends with him. But I was like, I can't believe he's lying. And when at the end, when she was like, "Screw you," I was like, great, that's the way this should end, because he's been lying to her and dishonest in a really offensive way for a very long time.
Yes.
And I'm like, great, that's such an. Then she sends an explicit photo of herself.
She asks her boyfriend to beat him up, which he does.
Yep, okay.
This is the guy that murdered some mobsters recently.
Yes.
When he beats him up, he's beaten up again. He's just an utterly pathetic schlub of a guy. And then she sends, as we talked about earlier, she sends an intimate, sends a photo of her performing oral sex on her boyfriend.
Then he comes home and he finds his dad having sex with the woman that had first hired him to kill those guys in that apartment.
It was too, wasn't it?
And he walks in on them having sex, and it's just like, okay, nobody really freaks out about it. I don't know what to make of that, and and then he says the hit girl retired and never became hit girl again.
She beat up some bullies.
She beats up some bullies at school. Yes, and that's the end of.
And then the final shot is Red Mist.
Oh, Red Mist!
Wait till they get a load of me.
The line from Batman '89, and that movie casts such a long shadow over this podcast.
Absolutely, it does.
So many, but anyway.
Before we,
yeah. Go ahead.
That's the comic.
That's the comic.
Before we go any further, I want to address the elephant in the room, which is that I can't really say kick ass because Kumar, I don't have the right accent. So I'm glad that you're saying. I'll let you say.
Okay, I'll say kick ass.
And I will now.
You say Dave, I'll say kick ass.
Very good. But also we need to talk about So Chloë Moretz. I found this out. Yeah. We're reading the Wikipedia page. Chloë Moretz, when she was filming this, she was only 12.
Okay.
And she said in an interview, if I ever uttered one word that I said in kick in the film, I would be grounded for years. I'd be stuck in my room till I was 20. Yeah. I would never in a million years say that. Yeah. She said, according to her, during filming, she could not even bring herself to say the film's title out loud in interviews.
Wow.
Instead, calling it the film in public and kick butt at home. Well, so Kumar, for the rest of the public, for the rest of the podcast, I'm going to call it either the film or kick butt.
Okay, that's interesting considering how much she came out in defense of the second one. But anyway,
well, she was 12.
Yes,
she was 12. She didn't like to swear.
She's 12.
Marzi can't even. My youngest can't even bring himself to say the word idiot.
Right.
He calls it eye language. Whenever he reads it.
But in the comic they actually mention if they made a movie she would be played by, and it was somebody else. Who was it? Another young actress at the time. I'd have to read the comic, and I don't want to do that. Anyway.
Yeah, I'm not reading this.
So 2010 we get this movie. As we mentioned, it was already in the works. Before the first issue come out.
Well, it's being written at the same time as the comic. essentially. I'm pretty sure, because
we've sold the rights, but who knows how... Yes.
Because of how significantly it deviates from the comic in the second half.
Yes.
So in the first half, it hews pretty closely, including having some of the same dialogue, like the Armenian man, and some of the lines he utters about being not a mathlete, things like that. They all make it into the film in their entirety. But about halfway through, it starts to deviate pretty significantly.
Yeah.
And the screenplay was written by Matthew Vaughn.
Yep.
And his writing partner, whose name I have somewhere, it's Jane... goodness me, where is it?
I thought I wrote...
Jane Goldman. Okay. It's Jane Goldman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
I did want to mention Matthew Vaughn also directed X-Men First Class.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good film.
It's not bad, yeah.
Unfortunately, beyond the scope of... Is it beyond the scope of our podcast? It's technically
we haven't talked about the Fox movies
We haven't talked about the Fox movies, have we? Anyway, now is not the time to discuss that. Let's return to our discussion of the film.
Okay. So opening scene, we get the same opening scene. The special effects are terrible. They look awful when he jumps off this building. He crashes, this Birdman crashes into a car and dives, and the crowd barely reacts. And so I thought, aha, here we are. We're already out of the realm of the real, because in Watchmen, if somebody had fallen off a building and crashed...
They get splattered.
The crowd would be like... There would be a response beyond a few gasps. I mean, it would be brutal to see somebody... They were standing there watching this guy jump up. Anyway.
Well, I think here's where we would say this film doesn't suffer from Mark Millar's delusion that more realism equals more good film.
Yeah.
This film is full of over-the-top... It's got plenty of over-the-top things.
Yeah.
Plenty of comic book-esque silliness.
Yes.
And plenty of, as I said earlier, cliches.
Yeah.
Now, it's very cliche. Like, early on, there's a pretty significant deviation from the film early on when Kick Butt Dave is mugged.
Yeah.
Something that doesn't happen in the comic.
Yes.
So
the movie's better about structuring things in a way that things come back.
It's got a classical structure.
Yes.
So cliche, one way of saying it's cliched, but the other way of putting it is that it's workmanlike. They're doing the work. They're putting in the work to have narrative beats that follow up on one another.
Yes, yeah. So, like, the guy that's Red Mist, I can't remember the hero's name, it's played by Christopher Mintz-Plasse, who was from Superbad, which is a movie that I absolutely...
He's McLovin. Let's just call him McLovin.
So McLovin is in it, and he's established quite strongly early in the comic book shops. And we hear that he's the son of a rich man. Or
someone rich.
Pulls up in it. Yeah.
He has a bodyguard.
Yes.
We know almost straight away that he's the mobster's son.
Yes.
Yeah.
That just established right away.
There's a very funny scene. This is another thing. This film's funny.
There are some funny bits in it, yeah.
Yeah, at least as funny as your average Marvel movie, and probably more funny.
Probably, yeah.
There's a funny scene. The mobster boss, played by Mark Strong, is torturing one of his underlings.
Yes.
Who is reporting who has lost a shipment of cocaine.
Yeah.
He says it was taken by Batman.
Yes.
But the Russian... He
doesn't say it was Batman. He says he describes someone that fits the description of Batman.
Keep comically misinterpreting it as being Batman. He says there's a man in a suit with a mask, and he goes, "You're saying Batman took the cocaine?" He's like, "I didn't say Batman." They're yelling at one another. "I didn't say Batman." Yeah. Anyway, you've got his finger in like some bolt cutters. They're going to cut off his finger. And he says, okay, and Mark Strong's character says, okay, what do you want me to believe? Because my contact with the Russian mob says you sold him the cocaine at cost, or whatever. So what should I believe, man? Should I believe that you've got greedy and are selling my coke, or Batman took it? He's like, it wasn't Batman!
Yeah.
And then Mark Strong's like, whatever, I'm going to go watch a film with my son.
Yeah. And
he leaves. And some of the mobsters yell after him, that's a lame excuse! Anyway, out he goes. Someone takes over, they start torturing him. Chop off his finger. He's like screaming. Ah! It's all off screen.
Yeah.
Ah! And then Mark Strong sits down in the car with McLovin.
Yes.
And they're talking about, he's like, Dad, I'm going to miss it. It starts in 10 minutes. He's like, don't worry, son, we'll just miss the previews. Meanwhile, in the background, it's like, ah! It's comical. It's a comical scene. I was laughing.
Yes. So 13 minutes into this movie, so 10 minutes in we get the mention of Batman, 13 minutes in we find out there are other heroes around.
We very, very quickly see Hit Girl and Big Daddy.
Why did I write down the words bowling alley in my notes?
Because she wants to go to the bowling alley.
Oh, yes. Okay, so Hit Girl wants to go to the bowling alley.
We're shown a scene that comes more than halfway through the comic, which is of the backstory of Big Daddy training Hit Girl to take a shot while wearing a bulletproof vest. Yeah. This is one of the very first scenes in the film.
Yeah.
This is a key difference to the comic.
Yeah.
I think really important from a storytelling perspective and really increased my enjoyment of the film is that from the very beginning, we have almost three...
There's a parallel storyline.
Parallel storylines. Yes. 3 parallel storylines.
Yeah.
The story of Kick Butt Dave.
Yep.
The story of McLovin / Red Mist and his relationship with his father.
Yeah.
Who's jerk, who's a mob boss who's also but trying to raise him.
Yeah.
And Hit Girl's relationship with Big Daddy, played by Nicolas Cage.
Yes.
Who's just great in this.
Yeah, we have to talk about Nicolas Cage a little bit. So Nicolas Cage, born Nicholas Coppola, changed his name to avoid accusations of nepotism.
Because he's related to Francis Ford Coppola?
Yes, but he changed his name to the Marvel Comics character Luke Cage, Power Man.
Amazing. I didn't know that. I didn't know that was why he chose
That's why he's
Cage.
named after Luke Cage, Power Man.
Amazing.
And he has been in 2 Ghost Rider movies. Was gonna play Superman.
He was.
He did not, but he did end up voicing Superman in the Teen Titans Go movie.
He did.
He used to own an Action Comics #1 that was stolen from his house. He was a big time comic book guy. So he's Big Daddy in this. He has a very different physique than Big Daddy in the comic.
Big Daddy doesn't have anything like a realistic physique. He's just like a big square. Nicolas Cage, yeah, sure, he's not in super shape.
But when in his Batman outfit, he delivers his lines like Adam West, which to me was the best choice as an actor to do those strange.
His costume is Big Daddy. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir. It's so funny. And his costume, he's wearing a mustache in his daily life. And in his costume, he adds...
puts on the handlebars.
The handlebars to the mustache.
Yes. As part of his face.
So funny. And he's so... And another thing is he's so saccharine with Hit Girl. He calls her baby girl.
Yes. Child.
And child all the time.
He calls her child.
And he's buying her... It's so... It's such a loving...
His outfit really looks like the 89 Batman outfit.
Yes.
Or more like the Christian Bale one. Like the armored. It's even almost got the little ears just short enough so they don't break copyright.
And he's got... he and Hit Girl have a belt with their initials on it.
With ridiculous initials on them.
It looks...
So I when he did the Adam West thing, that really did really crack me up.
So how did we get? Oh right, the parallel storyline.
Yeah, we get those guys in early. Now Kick-Ass, it's pretty close to the comic. He becomes Kick-Ass, but there's no gym training. He doesn't do any training. No. He just orders the scuba suit off eBay, just like he does in the comic, and then he just goes out. And his first, but
he's almost not even the. Yeah, you're right. He does just go out. In fact, and he never wins a fight. Well, except against.
Well, the first fight was good because he. Unlike the comic, when he goes out there, and he goes after the muggers, the guys that robbed him first time.
I wanted to mention the mugging scene. It's almost like his origin.
Yeah.
He's mugged. They take his comics.
Yeah.
And they're these jerks. It's like the 3rd time they've been robbed that month.
Yeah.
These muggers take the comics, and there's a bloke watching it.
And he doesn't do anything.
He closes his curtains. Yeah. In the narration. Dave says, what is this? Why did he just watch? Why did people just watch? There's something similar in Watchmen, actually, where Rorschach's origin.
Well, that was...
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, what was that?
I don't want to talk about it.
I do.
It's a Kitty Genovese. It's Kitty Genovese, but I don't want to talk...
It's the same name. Kitty Genovese, and Genovese wasn't Genovese the name of the...
I don't remember. All right, you look that up, and I'll keep talking. So, and he says, what kind of world do we live in? I was mugged, and someone just watched me.
It's fucking Genovese.
There you go. Reference.
But the Kitty Genovese story might have not been true. We've learned.
I've heard that. Yeah, I have heard that too.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
But then, and he says, well, he asks a rhetorical question. What would you do differently? He says.
Yeah.
You know, this is in this. You know, we don't live in a comic book world. The good guys don't act like that. Or if the good guys are real, they don't act like that. But the bad guys aren't make believe.
Yeah.
Alice got mugged by some bad guys. It's so different from the comic, where Dave's motivation is essentially just because I want to be cool.
Yeah, he maybe has a little bit more altruism in here. Wasn't there a line where he said, "I'd rather die"? And what was that about?
It's another bit. It's very cliched, but that's fine because cliches are the engines of storytelling. Sometimes
I think. Well, you know what? I think it has to be cliche because the reality, which even Mark Millar doesn't address but claims to address, is that if you did go out in that suit, which these characters talk about, his friends talk about,
you'd just get killed.
You would get killed. You would get beat up and killed. If you
People have guns in America. God, isn't practically everyone armed in America?
Yeah, so I think you have to put it in a fictional world where he can survive.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and that's
instead of getting beat up, he gets stabbed right away. Well, he does get a little bit beat up, but then he gets stabbed almost immediately. He gets hit by the car.
Training, so he's swinging his sticks around, and the guy, the mugger, it's like he knows boxing or something because he just moves out of the way of the stick every time. And then stabs him, and then and then he gets hit by the car.
Yeah. And he doesn't strip off his costume, which makes way more sense.
No, instead he begs the paramedic not to mention the costume. So the paramedic says, spreads the story.
That makes so much more sense. If he asked the paramedic, please don't tell anyone about the costume I'm wearing.
So the paramedic threw away the costume.
Yes.
And instead, Dave is left to put about the story that the paramedics threw out his clothes because they were bloodstained. Yeah. Which no one believes.
Yes.
Rightly so.
Yes. Right. So he gets fixed up, this time with a lot of metal, Wolverine metal in his body.
And he's up and walking around almost straight away.
He's up and walking around, which is
completely
stupid, very stupid.
Fine, whatever.
But he goes out again as Kick-Ass, and this time it's similar to the comic. He sees a guy being attacked by a gang. And
he's trying to rescue a cat. The cat?
Yes, he tries to rescue a cat first, which I liked. I liked the scene where he pulls down a lost cat poster and he walks around the neighborhood asking everybody if they've seen a cat.
He's showing people, have you seen this cat? And everyone just like shakes their head. It's the most nondescript cat.
Yeah, because he's this guy in a weird scuba suit with a weird mask on.
It's funny.
It's a really good moment, and I actually like that he
sees the cat. Oh, wonder of wonders, he sees the cat. It's just a tabby. You couldn't pick it from a million other cats.
Here's it meowing way up in
it's up on the side. He climbs up. He's like, "Come on, Mr. What's it called, Mr. Bitey?"
Yes, Mr. Bitey. I think that's right.
He's like, "Come on, Mr. Bitey. Come on, Mr. Bitey won't come." He falls down. The guy running trips over him.
Yeah.
Which leads his pursuers to catch up. They're, I think they're Hispanic, and it's later revealed that it's some gang violence.
Right.
Gang on gang violence.
Yeah.
So he starts getting wailed on. Yeah. Kick-Ass sticks up for him. He's getting beat up, but he's also hitting them.
Yeah. Then the cell phones come out. People are filming
it, and we have some great cuts to some very, very grainy security footage.
Yeah.
And also some very, very crappy cell phone footage from a Motorola style flip phones.
I think this is the moment where he says, "I'd rather die than let this man." Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So one of the gangbangers whips out a knife. And he's like, just take off, you know. Like,
yeah.
He's like, I'm not leaving him. He said, Kick-Ass out of breath. He goes, "You're really gonna die? You're nuts.
Yeah.
You're stupid. Are you really gonna die for this?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "There's three of you beating up one guy."
Yeah.
In front of this big audience.
Yeah.
Who's nuts?
So this is.
I'd rather die than leave him.
So
it's a good moment.
It is a good moment. I don't know that I would believe. Well, I don't know where does his moral center come from. We don't know. He doesn't have. His mother died of an aneurysm over a hilarious conversation about Count Chocula, which was very personal to me. I'm like, I could imagine dying. I will die of an aneurysm while talking about Count Chocula. That is how I'm going to go out. But
I think that's kept in from an earlier, from when this hews a little closer to the comic.
Yes.
So it doesn't really. It's very much similar to the comic. We have a cut to him yelling out, a fantasy scene of him yelling out over the grave, "I will avenge you, mother." There are no fantasy cutaways anywhere else in the film. This is the only time it does it.
Right.
And it's quite jarring because none of the rest of the film has that.
He says there was nothing like that.
Yeah.
So, but my question is like, why is he so moral? We don't see his father instilling those morals into him or anything.
No, his father's barely figures in this, unlike in the comic. No, I think it's that scene where he's mugged and the man turns away.
Right. Okay, you're right. So,
like I said, this doesn't feel real.
No, but I would say it feels fake. It feels like the cliche, but it works so much better than him running into the fire in the comic.
Yes.
Where he's suddenly like, we gotta run into that fire. I'm like, why? You haven't done anything like this for a stranger's baby? Yeah. So anyway, so the same rumors about him being a gay prostitute come up. The girl befriends him, but she actually says, is it wrong for me? I always wanted a gay friend. Is it wrong for me
to say that?
So
and his friends egg him on.
It's kind of wrong, but
they talk about it. You know, he doesn't really want to play it that way, but his friends egg him on. It's like, no, it's a chance.
And also, she works as a volunteer at a needle exchange, which I was like, okay, this is actually a superhero. She's an actual superhero.
In the comic, she's a mean. She's a bitch. In the comic, she's like a nasty person.
She's just a preppy, mean girl. Prom queen type,
She's needlessly cruel to him when he waits around to talk to her.
Yeah.
She, of course, there's the pornographic selfie she sends.
Yeah.
It's like, does Mark Millar have a problem with women? I don't know. But in this, his friends say she's got a thing for lame ducks.
Yes, that's right.
She's got that instinct to care for the bird with the broken wing, and she sees him very much as that, someone who's been beaten up for his sexuality. I don't think they actually mention they don't mention the prostitute thing in the film. They just say, they think you're gay, you got mugged because you're gay.
You might be right.
In the comic, it's you're selling your ass in the village.
Right.
In Greenwich Village. And in the film, it's just like, no, do people think you're gay? You know, people think you got beaten up and your clothes taken away because you're gay. Okay.
So I will say
she wants to defend him.
So there's a bit of plot seeding here, which makes no sense in the comic because so she's the one, she says, actually this guy at the needle exchange has been giving me some trouble, he keeps calling me. So he's the guy that was in that big room of people in the comic is actually connected to his girlfriend or his friend.
Yes.
No, it wasn't a random caller. So this is a
dad's girlfriend,
huge coincidence that the guy that visited her at the needle exchange is connected to the mafia gang and is a shipper for them, because that's why Hit Girl attacks their little den.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, this is a bit too interconnected.
But coincidences, it's just I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think this film is very much. But I kind of liked it for that.
Yes.
I mean, because it's what you expect. Kind of like trite, hackneyed storytelling elements.
Yeah.
I didn't hate, especially after reading the comic where there's no theme.
Yes.
And there's no.
Yes. Yeah. So
it's just nice to kind of see a story that makes sense.
So it plays out very similar. He shows up at the den in his outfit. Again, there's the jokes about Halloween, which are in the comic, are in the movie, where the doorman's like...
Halloween's a few months away.
Yeah.
Kick-Ass is already world famous, been on the news. This is another thing that's not particularly realistic. Like, the video of Kick-Ass Kick Butt goes viral.
Yeah.
And like, people are talking about him on talk shows.
Yes.
He's in the paper. The world, by which probably means North America, the world is obsessed with.
There was a guy
him.
that was walking around in a super suit, I feel like in Seattle or something, just like doing good deeds or something, but he wasn't getting super cover. He wasn't getting real coverage like this.
Oh, if we could, I don't know if we should digress here. I kind of want to come back to this later, but there are people that do this.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
Whenever there's a comic or a film about a masked vigilante, they'll drag some of these guys out of the woodwork.
Right.
So with Watchmen, they did. I think there's a special feature on one of the Watchmen DVDs, which is called like The Real Watchmen.
Okay.
And it's just it's funny.
Okay.
But people go around and talk to these vigilantes. There's plenty of them. People do this.
Yeah.
They play Batman. They'll often have a lair. One guy had a bookshelf in his home that he rigged to retract, but he's still leaving his own home. Right. It's just he comes out from behind his bookshelf.
Right. Okay, so he shows up at the den. It plays out very similar. Hit Girl appears I was really wondering how they were going to I was really, what is the tone of the comic was one of my questions. Is it supposed to be comedic or...
Not comedic at all.
Well,
No.
is it supposed to be comedic? Or is it supposed to be laughing at
who
the
knows?
fight scenes?
I don't know.
Because when Heat Girl shows up and she starts chopping off people's arms and legs, we get the Banana Splits theme song
Yes.
playing in the background, and it's like, okay, this is supposed to be some
But
goofy fun thing.
it is fun, I think. I liked Hit Girl's fight scenes.
Yes, I think
I think
okay,
they're really well choreographed, and there's a fun incongruity with Chloë Moretz.
Yes.
She's 12 years old.
Yeah.
Running around fighting with a samurai
so
sword.
I think the things that...
and swearing like a sailor.
I think it's marginally better than the comics in the sense that we get to see her do backflips. In one scene in the climax, she runs up a wall and does a flip. That kind of ridiculous stuff, which I really enjoy seeing in a Jackie Chan movie or something like that, is fun. There, I don't think they, because it's realistic, they don't go far enough for it to have been really fun for me. Or
Sure, it doesn't go completely over the top, but I feel like it is quite over the top.
And I think yes,
I think
but I think Banana Splits it's kind of obvious. You know what I mean? Like the joke is obvious 1 second in. As soon as you start playing it, tra la la la. It's like okay, I get it. Can we cut this scene 2 minutes
I do agree,
shorter?
and I think I've made it. I think I've made it clear that I consider a lot of things this film does obvious, but I don't hate it for it.
Right.
In fact,
right.
It's never going to be in my top 10
And
movies.
again, I don't really get her personality. Like I don't know if she's a kid or if she's kind of an adult or what. Anyway,
There's no in-depth exploration of how what kind of issues she would have from being essentially brainwashed and abused by because the film goes to great lengths to show what a loving relationship they have.
Yes.
They make one another. He gets her presents.
Yeah.
They make one another.
But
hot
the presents
drinks.
are weapons.
Yeah. But he takes her bowling.
Yeah.
They do all this fun stuff. He wants revenge. He's not the accountant who makes up a fantasy. He's an actual cop in this one. Who was framed
that's an
by the mob.
interesting plot. And why did the wife die in this?
She died. She killed herself while he was in jail.
Right. That's right.
And Hit Girl was literally. They extracted her via cesarean from her mother's body.
Yeah.
It's a bit grim actually. I didn't really like that detail.
That's right.
But in this one, it's like tropes aren't bad. So in this, Big Daddy really is the cop out for revenge.
And,
he's been framed. He's out for revenge.
The whole story is done. It's related in a comic book, which I think maybe was drawn by John Romita Jr. It sure looks like it.
It was.
And his old cop partner is still around, so he's like trying to warn him and get him off this path he's in life.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just reading some of my notes. I really like the way. I'm sorry that you didn't enjoy Hit Girl's introduction with Banana Splits.
Oh, it's okay. I mean, it's better than
I really liked it. I like her filthy mouth.
Yeah.
I like.
Yes, but why does it's the same line? Why is her filthy mouth better in the movie than the? This is. I'm not questioning you. I'm asking the question.
Oh, it's a completely valid question, because it's so.
It's almost the same lines. Where
it's almost exactly the same
lines. Like you.
Partly, it's Chloë Moretz really sells it. She really.
That might be it. That really might be it.
And it's just the tone is more fun. We're being invited to enjoy and find fun in the scene that she's in, whereas in the comic, I don't know what we're supposed to feel.
Yes. Okay.
Shock?
Right. That's it. That's the question I had about tone. You're right. This has a choice of tone.
Tone.
We're not supposed to be shocked by this. We're supposed to enjoy this scene. Even if we might be shocked by it based on what kind of audience member you are.
It doesn't really make sense why she's so foul-mouthed. Because her dad is so not foul-mouthed.
No, and why does she say he has a gay-looking taser? She calls Kick-Ass's taser. That's a gay-looking.
You can't even by 2010. That's already on the way out.
No,
isn't it? It's not 2009
it's not okay.
anymore.
And she's a 12-year-old, and her dad speaks so politely. And where did she learn this from?
It's
really
it's a hangover from the comic.
Yeah.
She says, she has no real reason for her to have a filthy mouth other than that it's like a funny shock value thing. There's a scene where they follow him home. Big Daddy's found his IP address. In the comic, they follow him back to his house. In this, Big Daddy hacks his IP.
Yeah.
By
the way, his Big Daddy's backstory in the movie is almost the same as Nicolas Cage's backstory in Con Air, where he ends up going to jail and he wants to get out to see his daughter.
Great. Anyway,
Yes.
I'll be damned if I don't get to this.
Yes.
I've been trying to get to the last 5 minutes.
Yes.
They like him. Hit Girl likes him. You know, they like him. And they say, you know, he goes, well, so if you ever need help, they say,
Yeah.
you know, we can help you. And he's like, oh, how will I contact you? And he's like, put a sign on your website that says, on vacation.
Yes.
But before he says that, Hit Girl says, you need to go to the mayor's office. He's got a big floodlight that he lights up when he needs it.
Yeah.
It's in the shape of a giant cock.
Yeah.
Then they say goodbye, and Nicolas Cage utters what I think might be my favourite line in the movie, where he goes, in the Adam West voice, Hit Girl, back to headquarters.
Yes. So his partner does point out that or somebody says that, you know, she's owed a childhood. So there's actually, so again, even though there's kind of, we get the banana splits, there's still like, okay, this is a traumatized child.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
It's very schizophrenic.
Yes. Yes. I think there was the challenge of reconciling storylines from the comic with the kind of story they wanted to tell in the movie.
So D'Amico starts getting paranoid because of all this, his warehouses are being hit.
He thinks it's Kick-Ass.
Yes.
Which this is the mistaken identity story. So Kick-Ass is running around in a mask. Yeah. Someone else in a mask, it's Big Daddy and Hit Girl, are hitting up all the mobs.
Yeah.
You know, businesses, distribution areas, warehouses, etc.
Yeah.
So Mark Strong is like, it's this guy Kick-Ass, you know, kick butt, whatever.
Yeah.
It's this guy, you know, he's the one doing it. We got to catch him. And at that point, his son, McLovin, comes in, who incidentally has wanted to be part of the... He keeps trying to convince his dad to let him help out with the mob stuff. Yeah. And his dad's like, no, get out of here, kid. Yeah. In fact, Mark Strong shoots a Kick-Ass impersonator because he wants to he wants to catch him so bad. He runs the guy down in the street who turns out to not be Dave. It's just a guy performing at a birthday.
But he
shoots him in cold blood.
I want to say this addresses an important question about the realisticness of the comic and the movie.
Yep.
Once you've caught Kick-Ass, how do you know it's him? Because anybody could buy the scuba suit and make this thing.
Yeah, and in fact they
would. Some people would. And why is there only one Kick-Ass MySpace page? Anybody could set that up.
Exactly. You just have to let it slide if you want to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But that's where Red Mist's plan is a good plan.
Yes.
Because Mark Strong has just shot a kick butt impersonator, and now he's doing coke.
Yeah.
He goes, "You back on the powder, boss?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Shut up! Are you my mum?" and then McLovin comes in, he's quickly moving, trying to cover it up. He's like, "Get out of here! Come on!" Yeah. And he goes, "Dad, no, you got to let me help with this. I got this plan, but I need this stuff." Gives his dad a list. So we know from the start that Red Mist is the mobster's son.
Yeah. We know right away, and we know he's there to trap.
He's there to trap. So it adds drama.
It adds drama, but
and tension. I was tense when they were going to their rendezvous.
Yes, you're right. But you're right. Rather than having it as a surprise, a twist, it actually works better to know what's coming.
From a storytelling standpoint, very much so.
Yeah. He's like, so Red Mist is, by the way, in the Red Mistmobile, once again, and we get a theme music is very close to the Danny Elfman Batman 89 music, very close.
Yeah.
And there's a bit in here, a comic bit, which I didn't like, where they try to dance in the car, which I just thought was dumb. But they're supposed to go to this warehouse where the gangsters are waiting and they're gonna
waiting in ambush. Yeah.
But when they get there, the place is on fire, and Red Mist runs in. He's like, "There's people in there."
Yeah. We know why Red Mist is running in because people he knows are in there.
Yes, but does he really care enough about those guys that he would run into a burning? This place is really on fire. I think
he's kind of dumb. And he just wants to... The plan's gone up in smoke, literally.
Yes.
And so he's just running in, and Kick-Ass is like, shouldn't we just call the... We need to call the fire brigade, man. So he's like, no, there's people, there's people in there.
Kind of a reversal of the fire
Makes much more sense, because Red Mist has a good reason for wanting to go in there.
Yes.
This is people he sees every day.
Yes.
So he runs in, and rescues a teddy bear, bizarrely.
Yes.
They don't need the fire brigade to get them out. They get out themselves.
Yeah.
Dave says, "Why'd you rescue the teddy bear?"
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. Shut up.
Yeah.
And then Red Mist goes and reports to his dad. They hug.
Yep.
And
I
and he says, "Well, Kick-Ass, he killed all my guys." And he goes, "No, it's not him. He's just some geek.
Yeah.
Someone else did that.
Yeah.
Did this, and I know who." And he takes the bear and he plugs in some
RCA cables.
RCA cables. You love to see it.
Yeah.
Can't remember the last time I saw a set of those. And he goes, "What the hell are you doing?" "Well, you remember when you bought this nanny cam to spy on my nanny when I was a kid?
Yeah.
Well, I set it up because I wanted to." And he's like, "Why on earth would you do that?" "Because I wanted to sell pictures of Kickbutt getting killed on the internet, Dad. God."
Yeah.
And then he plugs it in and he turns it on, and hilariously, the first few movies.
Yeah, it's like the nanny in the shower.
I think it might be his mum actually.
Oh,
in the
right.
shower.
Right.
The first few videos are of his mum in the shower. He scrolls past them, and it's a great scene.
Yeah.
It's Nicolas Cage. So we have the grainy nanny cam footage.
Yeah.
And there's a soft dissolve.
Yep.
There's a dissolve into film.
Yeah.
And then it's Nicolas Cage absolutely kicking the shit out of these guys.
Yeah.
Oh, and before that, there's a good scene where Mark Strong is looking at the burning. It's really well shot and lit. It's Mark Strong sitting in his car, looking out from the passenger seat, and he's in shadow, and he's lit by the fire, and then he rolls up his window. Good shot.
Yeah. So Kick-Ass retires again. I think for the third time or fourth time at this stage. But he makes a comment that I never felt so alone, which for some reason that line touched me like it was a real superhero moment.
Yeah, and that's his weakness, which Red Mist understands because he's a fellow comic book reader.
Yeah. So at some stage, now, an hour and 15 minutes into it, he confesses to his friend that he's not gay.
It's the last thing he wants to do as Kick Butt.
Yes.
He breaks
he actually shows up in the costume.
Yep.
So instead of this being... So it's in the middle of the comic, he shows up Kick-Ass and yells at her window, and then at the very end, in the last couple of pages, she finds out
resolved.
It's all...
And it's unpleasant.
In this, he comes into her room, he goes through the window,
he gets the girl.
And he reveals himself. It's an hour and 15 minutes into it, in a 2-hour movie. He pulls off the mask, he says, "I'm not gay," and they make out and they have sex. And she
assaults him first.
She assaults him
in a
first,
typical
but she...
hilarious scene, where he strikes a pose. He's often striking this pose. He does it with Red Mist too.
Yeah.
He strikes a pose, and he says, "It's me, Kick-Ass," and she doesn't hear him because she's blow drying her hair. Yeah. So he walks right up behind her. She sees him in the mirror. She screams, "Ha ha ha!" She sprays him with hairspray.
I don't know why she doesn't see him in the mirror first, because we do.
Yeah,
and she's looking in the mirror.
I know because they had a way they wanted this scene to play out, a hilarious way where she'd spot him in the mirror, and she starts wailing on him with the tennis racket. Yeah. He pulls off, and you're right. Instead of being angry at him as she should be, because he lied to her about being gay, and he's been applying tanning lotion to her because she thinks he's gay. She very quickly comes around.
So even more so than the comic, this is a violation. She is stripped nude in front of him.
It doesn't fly.
He could put tanning lotion on her, and he reveals that he's not gay, and she's like, she's okay with it.
Yes. It's not right, but from a storytelling standpoint, we want him to get...
I think from a typical Hollywood standpoint,
from a Hollywood storytelling, absolutely.
I think
we want him to get the girl.
You want him to get the girl, but I feel like why don't we leave out the whole first hour of the gay plot line and then find some other way for him to get the girl?
Yep. It's funny because they made so many good changes, but they left in some of this unsavory Miller stuff.
Yeah.
I guess they just felt like he was a producer on the film.
He was, and so was John Romita Jr. as executive producers. They're both listed as executive producers, which is really an honorary title that doesn't necessarily mean anything.
He did have some input because apparently he and Vaughn are friends.
I believe it.
I think they met at a screening of Wanted.
Okay.
Which is an earlier Miller property that was made into a film, a terrible film. Yeah. I dare say we'll get to it in time.
We'll get to it, yeah.
Oh my god, we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes.
All right,
we better pick this up.
We're getting there. So the setup Red Mist again sets up the meeting with the Big Daddy and Hit Girl, as in the comic, and they get there, and then
There's quite a poignant scene where Big Daddy applies his makeup and puts on puts on his helmet.
Yep, and they're ambushed by.
The mobsters.
They're ambushed by the mobsters, and Hit Girl gets shot again in the chest, never in the face. Somehow
falls out the
window, as in the comics.
Big Daddy's tasered. They're dragged away. Red Mist has a change of heart.
Yeah,
or rather, he doesn't want.
He wanted Big Daddy and Hit Girl to get captured. He didn't want Kick-Ass to get captured.
But they capture him, and he says to his dad, "What'd you do that for?" He's just a nobody. He didn't do anything wrong. Is what he says.
Yeah.
He says, like, "Come on, son." You want to be in this business?
Yeah.
This business of human cruelty?
Yeah.
I'm going to torture this guy to death and live stream it on the internet so that no one dresses up like this and messes with my stuff again.
Yeah.
This is very silly.
Yes.
Very silly. It's like a live stream. It's called
so they capture them, they tie them up, they're live streaming the unmasking.
Yeah.
And again, I'm like, well, you can unmask anybody. How do we know who it is?
Exactly.
It doesn't make any sense.
All the major news networks are reporting on it.
Yes.
They show the first few minutes of it.
Because then they start beating up and torturing them. They're going to murder them. And then the legit news are like, okay, we can't show this anymore.
And they all run to their computers.
All the kids run to their computers. There's a scene here which I hate, in which one of the girl's friends... So one of Kick-Ass's friends is lusting after this girl who's a friend, but of course he's a big nerd, so she has no interest in him. But when this torture is happening, she hugs him in kind of... She's traumatized by the footage she's seeing.
Hugs her.
And he's kind of like, oh, I'm getting a hug. And then... I was like, okay,
I wish they'd left that out. I agree.
They could have really... so then the torture happens, and then of course Hit Girl, it turns out, is alive. Big Daddy dies, as in a
fairly moving scene, I think.
I guess
he helps her take out the baddies. He's yelling out instructions to her, and then he tells her how proud he is, and then he expires. Yes. She kisses him and says goodnight.
Yeah,
and then she goes back. They go back to headquarters. Dave is like, well, okay, this is the end of this.
Yeah,
we're done. You can come back to my house.
Yeah, you can live with me.
Ahead of figuring out what we're going to do. But this is it. She drives the Mistmobile. It's not Dave driving it. She's driving the Mistmobile. She can barely see over the dashboard. Yeah. I like it. And it's just like, the hell with that. And he goes into the bathroom, same bathroom Big Daddy applied his makeup in, washes his face, looks at himself in the mirror, comes back out. She's packing up all the guns. He says, what are you doing? She's like, well, I'm going to finish this.
Yeah.
I'm not, my dad died tonight. I'm finishing this. Yeah. And he says, you can't do it alone. And then we have the mystery box. They've ordered something off eBay for $300,000. They're rich. Yeah. They're rich because they were selling the cocaine.
Yes.
They were the ones selling the cocaine to the Russians.
Yeah.
So the Russian mob wasn't lying.
Yeah.
Neither of them were lying. Batman did take the coke, and it was being sold to the mob.
Yeah.
So she's got just like $3 million. So they've bought this thing off the internet, and Big Daddy has attached Gatling guns to whatever it is.
They haven't revealed what it is.
We can see the Gatling gun sticking out of the crate that it arrived in, and Dave looks into the crate and goes, "Whoa, that's awesome!" She goes, "Isn't it? You better familiarize yourself with this." And she hands in this big manual. Because you're going to be using it in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Right.
So then they have a huge assault on the headquarters of the mafia boss. And this is like maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes. It's a very long sequence, super gory. They used Ennio Morricone's score from A Few Dollars More.
Is that what it was?
Yes. When she enters. I'm not sure why. There's no thematic relevance.
Nope, it's just cool.
I guess it's just cool. So then they have this big fight. There's a rocket launcher, and we learned the thing in box was actually a jetpack, which has Gatling guns. So it's very... So
it's
so
over the top.
It's so comic booky.
Yes.
In a way that the comic was trying very hard to not do. And probably was trying not to do in order to, as I said at the beginning, to keep it, to make it filmable. They were like, well, we better not put any jetpacks in this because we want it to be able to film it. No, they put a jetpack in this thing.
Because you need it. This is a film. A comic book movie's got to have something like this.
Yes.
Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, and then
so
they
I have relevant. I have relevant data here. A relevant quote.
Okay.
So Millar, in his role as executive producer, fought against the jetpack.
Oh wow. Okay. Yep.
He when asked at a Q&A after a screening of the film about the differences between the comic and what ended up on screen, Millar brought up the film's new ending, where Kick-Ass uses a jetpack to save Hit Girl instead of the elevator scene from the comics. At first, Millar said that he balked at such an over-the-top ending, but director Matthew Vaughn insisted on shooting the scene and seeing how it worked in the final cut. Millar acknowledged that, after watching the film with an audience, that scene got the biggest cheer.
Right. Of course. Yeah.
In that same interview, Mark Millar promised that if you bought the Kick-Ass hardcover, it would come with a guarantee to make your penis slightly longer.
Great.
Yeah. This just sounds like something the writer of this comic would say.
Yeah. What else did I... So that's basically... I wanted to mention that certain things were brought up in this movie, including Steve Ditko's Spider-Man comics are mentioned specifically.
Yes.
Sin City is mentioned specifically. I can't remember what the context was.
Lost was mentioned. Well, that's not a comic, of course.
No, but they did mention Scott Pilgrim, which was interesting.
Yes, they did. Well, we'd definitely be getting Scott Pilgrim. So
this movie was like... it had some awareness.
Yes. Yes. It did. It doesn't have it does have some awareness. It doesn't have a lot of depth.
No.
I don't think it's trying to say anything about comics.
No.
It's not trying to say anything really about the kind of people who become comic book heroes.
No, we don't. In fact, we don't. Why did Big Daddy become a hero? He's not a comic book hero.
Because he wanted to make it fun for his daughter. Because he wanted to rope. That's essentially what we're offered.
Yes, but we have no. Okay. Okay.
That's what we're offered.
All right.
Fine. That's not the point of this film.
Yeah.
This film is like the literal definition of a popcorn movie.
Yeah.
It's really just a string of kind of like action sequences, over the top action sequences, strung together with a very workmanlike plot that's driven strongly by Hollywood storytelling cliches.
Yes.
And I liked it. I liked it perfectly fine for that, especially in comparison to the comic.
Yeah.
So I would say I enjoyed this a lot more than I enjoyed Mystery Men, or even Tank Girl.
Okay.
Perhaps it's just because the comic is so woeful.
Well, you know what? I mean, Mystery Men is a good comparison because we were talking about the parodies of superhero movies and where are they and what are they, and this is kind of one of them. I guess it's kind of in that wheelhouse.
It is kind of like a parody in that they're
talking about superhero movies and
that they're Dave Kickbutt is almost not the main character of this film.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have a lot of agency. He just sort of gets dragged from situation to situation.
Yeah.
He never wins a fight, as I think I said.
Yeah.
He's just sort of the framing device around which we kind of have some more interesting characters revolving. Like Red Mist, Big Daddy, and Hit Girl. We see their sort of origins coterminous with his as the movie kind of goes through its storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I found myself laughing quite often at the humour in it, and I enjoyed not being surprised by the story beats.
Okay, that's a good lead-in for our evaluations. So the comic, obviously, a nay.
Complete nay.
Movie. Okay, so you're saying yay.
It's yay for me.
I'm gonna go nay. I think there was not quite enough there. I think even with her flipping off the walls, it wasn't. No, it's torn between two worlds. I think it's torn between trying to be grounded and wanting to be over the top.
That's a good point, but I feel like this is the question that I've asked in previous weeks. Why is this a comic?
Yeah.
So why is Kick-Ass a comic? It shouldn't be a comic. It's terrible.
Yeah, you're right.
What Kick-Ass is a film.
Yes.
And that's why I give it a yay. Because the fact that this is being written at the same time as the comics are coming out.
I'm gonna give the adaptation a yay for that reason. That's where I plug that in, because I think it functions better as a movie, and also
you know what, Kumar? I'm going to be contrary and give it a nay.
Okay.
Because I don't consider it an adaptation.
Yeah, you're right. That's true as well. That's 100% legit. It is not an adaptation. They were made at the same time. It didn't actually.
It's literally a better product that was being produced at the same time, because this story is better suited to a film.
It's not even that. To me, what I like about it as an adaptation is that it takes out all the stuff that I really hated in the comic, like especially with the racism and the homophobia and all that stuff, is way watered down. It's there in the movie, but it's not nearly as bad, and it's more palatable for me for those reasons.
We're absolutely both right.
Yes. So,
absolutely.
Okay.
Do we have time for trivia?
Yeah, go.
This was filmed with no studio or distributor. Matthew Vaughn raised the money himself.
Wow. That's
he put
impressive.
$5 million of his own money into it, and
so he believed in it.
Essentially had a big party where all his wealthy friends helped pay for the movie. It was they did shop it around the studios first, and it was rejected by Sony because it was too violent.
Yeah.
And a nameless studio wanted to age up Hit Girl. A lot of people...
You know what? I actually thought that. I thought the Ramones I thought this would be better if she was 19.
Sure. And I don't want to... But this was rejected by one of the writers, Jane Goldman. She felt that a teenage Hit Girl would be sexualized.
That's true,
and that wasn't the point. If there was a point to that character.
Yeah.
At least she's not sexualized.
Yeah.
It was filmed mostly in Hamilton and Toronto, in Ontario, and partly in the UK.
Okay.
It was among the most copyright infringed films of 2010.
Uh-huh.
It was illegally downloaded over 11.4 million times.
Wow.
Second that year only to Avatar. So popular with nerds, I would think.
Right.
We're not quite... The Marvel juggernaut is just warming up at this point.
Yeah, well, Iron Man would have been 2008.
Correct.
And then Hulk would have been a few months after that, and then
the Thor movie doesn't come out to 2011. So
right, okay.
Yeah, so there's only been Iron Man and the Hulk so far. So the as I said, the Marvel engine, Marvel's utter dominance of the comic book movie landscape is not established yet.
Yeah,
so a lot of people who like comic books would have gone to this, would have been interested in this film. But speaking of Hit Girl, a lot of reviewers had a problem. Hit Girl, rather. A lot of reviewers had a problem with Chloë Moretz and her age.
Well,
mostly
it's not. Swearing, it's apparently. Not only. You know what? For me, it's not the swearing and. It's not her swearing or her being violent. It's threats to a child that, to me, were more uncomfortable. Yeah. And often, it's even if you watch even those teen horror movies, often kids don't get killed. They might be threatened, but they almost never cross the line where a little kid is threatened or killed, that's 10 or 12 years old. Yeah. So that was the thing when people were pointing guns at her, he shoots her when she's wearing a bulletproof vest. What if he missed? Yeah. What if anybody missed? They never shoot her in the head, and it would have been so... No. It's
interesting because it's mostly just done because wouldn't it be cool if a little girl was running around?
Yes, exactly. It's a one-note joke.
There's no depth to it, and I completely accept that. Yeah. All right, a final reflection. Okay. I've got written down here. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Does Millar write movie comics? You already spoke a little bit about that.
Oh yeah, I think he does, especially now. He has a deal with Netflix, I believe. He's got a production deal. So
I've got a quote from the same Q&A from the film. Millar addressed the notion of whether he writes comics with movie deals in mind. If I wanted to write Kick-Ass for a movie, I would have played it safe. I just write the kind of comics I want to read. So he wants to read this kind of comic.
Yeah,
on paper,
I believe it.
On paper, Kick-Butt doesn't seem like the sort of thing that would be made into a movie. But now it's being called a game changer. And history can tell you about... So much for that prediction. And everyone wants to get on board with this kind of thing. I just think if you try to chase the dollar, if you try to write a comic as a movie, it's never going to work. Just write what you want to write. I see the movie as $100 million ad for my book.
You know,
I should have done the
I'm going to
Scottish
say,
accent there.
my phone switched off, so I don't have the bell.
Ding-a-ding-a-ding.
When Zack Snyder made the Watchmen movie, he said, if it makes more people buy the comic, I'll be happy.
Yeah, you know, I would be happy if this movie made less people buy the comic.
Yes.
Don't read the comic, watch the film instead.
Yes.
And what have we got for its next week?
Okay, next week we're going to look at Monkey Bone.
Amazing.
Starring Academy Award winner Brendan Fraser.
Brilliant.
Based on the comic Darktown, which is pretty hard to find, but I somehow found it online somewhere. It might be
We found it, so you don't have to.
Archive.org or something.
And this will be our 25th.
Is that... I think 50 is significant because that'll be a year, but it's 25...
25 is pretty good, I think. We've
Okay,
put
it's
up
a nice
with one
round
another
number,
this
I
long.
guess. Yes, actually, that's true.
There's something
Yeah.
to be said.
Anyway, I've never seen it. I've never read it. Like this week's episode, so it'll be interesting.